Welcome to the Heartbreak Chronicles, where every story is a raw reflection of life. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned, give us a like to show your support, and share this episode with your friends. Don't forget to leave a comment and let us know what you think. Now, let's dive into today's story. Thomas Marshall stands in front of the newest building he's designed and smiles with satisfaction. As an architect who has risen to fame in the city, his work has always attracted widespread attention. This office building, which blends modernity with classical beauty, will undoubtedly be another milestone in his career. Looks good, doesn't it? He turned to the assistant beside him. I think Catherine will like it. At the mention of his wife's name, a hint of tenderness flashed in Thomas's eyes. They've been married for 15 years, and Catherine has been his biggest supporter and harshest critic. As Thomas returned to his office, his cell phone vibrated with a message from Catherine. Dinner at 8 p.m.? Don't be late this time, honey. We have guests. Thomas sighed. He'd completely forgotten about the dinner Catherine had arranged. It wasn't the first time. Lately he was always distracted. Work seemed to take up too much of his time and energy. I'll be on time, he replied, mentally calculating how to end the afternoon session early without offending his client. 7:55 p.m., Thomas pushes open the door to his house in a hurry. Laughter was already coming from the living room, and it looked like the guests had arrived. He quickly straightened his tie, took a deep breath, and walked into the bustling room. Ah, our busybody is finally here. There was a hint of flirtation in Catherine's voice, but Thomas could sense the hidden resentment. She gracefully walked over to her husband and gave him a soft kiss on the cheek. Come on, let me introduce you. This is George Holmes, the new marketing director of our company. Thomas politely extended his hand. Nice to meet you, George. George Holmes looks a few years younger than Thomas, tall and with a charming smile. He shook Thomas's hand warmly. I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Marshall. I've admired all your work. Dinner was served in a delightful atmosphere, with George's witticisms making Catherine laugh. Thomas notices that his wife's eyes have been sparkling with a strange light throughout the evening, and the way she looks at George gives Thomas a twinge of unease. After sending the guests away that evening, Catherine began clearing the table. Thomas tried to help, but was gently pushed away by his wife. You go rest. I know you're tired. Catherine's tone was calm, but Thomas sensed a hint of detachment. Catherine, Thomas hesitated. I apologize for always being so busy lately. Catherine interrupted. It's okay. I understand. We all have our own careers to attend to. She paused. By the way, I'm going to be traveling for a week next week. There's an important project at the company and George will be with me. Thomas felt his heart tighten, but he forced himself to smile in understanding. Okay, be safe. Do you need a ride to the airport? Catherine shook her head. No, the company will arrange a car. That night, Thomas lay in bed, tossing and turning. Catherine's steady breathing was clear in the darkness, but Thomas felt as if the distance between them was farther than ever. Over the next few days, Thomas was so busy wrapping up his new project that he barely had time to have a proper conversation with Catherine. By the time he got back to his senses, Catherine had already left for the airport, leaving a note saying she'd be back on time. Thomas stood in the empty living room and suddenly felt a wave of loneliness he had never felt before. He picked up his cell phone and hesitated before dialing Catherine's number. Hello? Catherine's voice sounded a little flustered. Hi, honey. Thomas tried to sound relaxed. Just wanted to make sure you got there safely. Oh yes, we just finished checking in. George's voice came on in the background. Catherine, it's time for us to board. I have to go, Thomas, Catherine said hurriedly. I'll send you a message. The phone hung up and Thomas stood still, the unease growing in his mind. He told himself not to think too much about it, that Catherine had always been a devoted wife. But George's handsome face and the twinkle in Catherine's eyes when she looked at him kept coming back to Thomas. Just then, Thomas's cell phone rang again. It's an unfamiliar number. Hello, is this Thomas Marshall? A woman's voice came through. I'm Lisa Holmes, George's wife. I think we need to talk. That's when he realized that a storm was brewing beneath the calm surface. Thomas stared at the screen of his cell phone, Lisa Holmes' words echoing in his ears. I think we need to talk. Behind that simple statement seemed to lie a myriad of possibilities, each of which sent shivers down Thomas's spine. "Mrs. Holmes," Thomas tried to keep his voice calm, "I don't quite understand what you mean. What do we have to talk about?" A bitter laugh came from the other end of the line. "Mr. Marshall, I think you know in your heart. Your wife and my husband." Her voice quivered. "They're not just on a business trip." Thomas felt a wave of vertigo, and he clutched the edge of the table in an effort to steady himself. "Do you have any evidence?" He heard his own voice, as if from a great distance. "Let's meet and talk about it," Lisa said. "This kind of thing isn't appropriate to discuss over the phone." Half an hour later, Thomas was sitting in a quiet cafe across from an elegant but obviously tired woman. Lisa Holmes looks younger than Thomas thought she would, but the worry in her eyes makes her look old. Lisa pulled a flash drive out of her bag and pushed it in front of Thomas. "It's evidence gathered by my private investigator," she said softly, "and I'm sorry to have to tell you this." Thomas's hand trembled slightly as he picked up the flash drive and inserted it into the laptop Lisa had brought with her. When he clicked on the first file, his heart almost stopped. The photos showed Catherine and George snuggling intimately, smiling at each other in a restaurant, and kissing affectionately in front of a hotel. Each photo was like a sharp knife, stabbing hard into his heart. "This can't be," Thomas muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. But even more shocking is yet to come. Lisa hesitated, then opened a video file. "It was taken 3 days ago," she said softly. "You may not want to see it, but I think you have a right to know the whole truth." The video begins to play. A familiar car appears on the screen, parked in an isolated parking lot. That's Catherine's car. Thomas's heart began to race and his throat tightened. Suddenly, the car began to shake violently. Thomas felt a wave of vertigo. He knew what was coming next, but he couldn't look away. The window slowly lowered and Thomas saw Catherine's face. She tilted her head back, her mouth slightly open, a look of pleasure on her face that he had never seen before. Then he heard her voice, and it froze his blood instantly. "Oh, George, right there. Don't stop." Thomas lurched to his feet, his chair falling to the floor with a loud thud. He struggled to control himself, and when he returned to his seat, his eyes were red and his face was as pale as paper. Lisa handed him a glass of water, sympathy in her eyes. "I'm so sorry," she said softly. "I know how painful it is." Thomas shook his head and said in a hoarse voice, "No, you don't. 15 years. 15 years of marriage. We've been through so much together. And I thought I knew her, thought our feelings for each other were real. But now I feel like my whole life has been a damn lie." His voice began to tremble and tears flowed down his face uncontrollably. "How could she do this to me? I gave her everything. I loved her. I trusted her. And now, she's in that asshole's arms, letting him. Thomas couldn't say any more, the pain and anger almost suffocating him. Lisa reached out and gently took Thomas's hand. "I know nothing I can say right now will ease your pain," she said, "but we can't just let them trample on us. We're going to make them pay." Thomas looked up, the tears in his eyes gradually being replaced by a cold fury. "You're right," he whispered, a hint of danger in his voice. "I'm going to make them regret it. I'm going to make Catherine realize what she's lost. And I'm going to make that bastard George know what happens when you touch another man's wife." Over the next few hours, Thomas and Lisa discussed their situation and possible responses in detail. They decided to stay put for now, gathering more evidence while secretly planning their counterattack. It was late at night when Thomas got home. He stood in the dimly lit living room and looked around. Every piece of furniture, every photo, carries the memories he and Catherine share. But now, all these memories have become bitter and false. Thomas went into the den and turned on his computer. He began searching for divorce lawyers, legal texts on property division, and even psychology articles on how to exact revenge. By the time the first rays of the sun shone through the curtains into the room, Thomas already had a tentative plan. Over the next few days, Thomas behaved as he always does. He went to work on time, came home at night, and even sent Catherine a few concerned texts. But beneath the outward calm, a storm is brewing inside him. Meanwhile, Lisa hasn't been idle. Using the convenience of her job at a social media company, she began collecting records of George and Catherine's online activities. She discovers that they've been secretly dating for almost a year, and this business trip could very well be a pivotal moment in their plans for the future. A week later, Catherine returned. Her face glowed with happiness, and it sent a stab of pain through Thomas. "How was your trip?" Thomas asked, pretending to be casual, trying to keep his emotions in check. Catherine nodded. "It went well. We accomplished everything we set out to do." She paused as if weighing her words. "Thomas, we need to talk." Thomas's heart tightened, but he remained calm on the outside. "Well," he said, "there's something I'd like to discuss with you as well." Catherine took a deep breath and was about to speak when Thomas's cell phone suddenly rang. It was a message from Lisa. "George just sent me a text saying he wants to talk to me tonight. I think they're getting ready for a showdown tonight. Be careful how you respond." Thomas looked at the screen, a sneer emerging from the corner of his mouth. So that's how Lisa learned of their plan. He looked up at Catherine and said, "Honey, why don't you get some rest? We'll have a nice chat tonight, okay?" Catherine nodded and gave a forced smile. What she doesn't realize is that just beneath this calm surface, a storm is coming that will destroy their lives. Later that night, just as Catherine was about to speak, Thomas beat her to it by saying, "Honey, there's something I want to ask you." Catherine nodded a little nervously. "Yes?" Thomas took a deep breath. "You and George, what exactly is your relationship?" Catherine's face suddenly turned pale, but she quickly composed herself. "We're just co-workers, Thomas." "What's wrong?" Thomas sneered. "Really? Then can you explain this?" He took out his cell phone and played the video of the car sex. Catherine's eyes widened as she hastily denied. This isn't true. This must be someone setting us up." "Don't fucking pretend, Catherine," Thomas said with pain and anger in his voice. "I know you've been cheating on each other for almost a year now. I've seen pictures of you at the hotel, the way you were intimate at the restaurant, and this. What? Is George's C***K better than mine?" Catherine was still trying to weasel out of it, her face flushed with shame. "Thomas, you're mistaken. Those pictures were probably... It's for work. We were just discussing the project." Thomas interrupted her sarcastically. "Oh yeah, I saw your discussion. That was a heated discussion you guys had in that video. Tell me, Catherine, did you think about me when you were moaning in the car?" Catherine fell silent, tears beginning to well up in her eyes. Thomas continued to rant. "I know you guys are planning your future on this trip. What are you guys going to do? Get a divorce and get together? Or are you going to keep sneaking around and playing your little games?" Catherine finally broke down and tears came to her eyes. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I didn't know things would turn out like this. I love George, but I love you too. I don't know what to do." Thomas felt a sharp pain, as if someone had stabbed him hard in the heart. "Love me?" He laughed bitterly. "If you love me, how could you betray me? 15 years of marriage, Catherine. 15 years. And you just threw it in the trash?" Catherine sobbed. "I know what I did was wrong, but I really love George. We have a special connection. I was going to tell you tonight." Thomas said coldly, "Yeah, you have a special connection. Special enough that you could ditch our marriage for him. Special enough that you can moan like a bitch in the car." Catherine tried to explain. "It's not like that, Thomas. I'm just lost. George makes me feel young, feel cherished. And what about me?" Thomas snarled. "Did I not cherish you? I gave you everything. Catherine, I fucking gave you everything. And you just threw our marriage away like toilet paper." Catherine lowered her head, speechless. She knew that no matter what she said, it wouldn't make up for the damage she'd done. Thomas took a deep breath and tried to calm himself. "Now, listen. I'm not going to let you off the hook so easily. You've ruined everything for us, Catherine. And now, I'm going to make you realize that betrayal has a price. You want youthful excitement, don't you? Fine. I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." Catherine looked up with fear and remorse in her eyes. What are you going to do?" Thomas sneered. "You'll find out soon enough. I hope George's S***T is worth losing everything. Just then, Thomas's cell phone rang again. It was a message from Lisa. George just had a showdown with me. I responded as we planned. It's up to you next. Thomas looked at the message with a flash of determination in his eyes. He knew that the next few days would be a long and painful battle, but he was ready. He's going to make Catherine and George pay dearly for their betrayal. The prelude to vengeance, and so it begins. In the days following the showdown, Thomas began his carefully planned revenge. He began by targeting Catherine's social network and career. Thomas began a series of posts about Catherine on his social media accounts, exposing her infidelity. Today I realize that my beloved wife has been cheating on me. Thomas wrote on the social media platform. Not only has she been cheating on me, she has turned our home into a place for her to cheat. Then he posted an even more revealing post. Turns out my wife likes to seek excitement in other people's cars. I should really thank her for teaching me what car sex means. These posts quickly caused an uproar. Catherine's friends have contacted her to ask what happened. Her co-workers began to look at her differently. Catherine broke down and questioned Thomas. How could you do this? This is too much. Thomas sneered. Excessive? I'm just telling the truth. Don't you like excitement? Now everyone knows how exciting you are. Thomas even starts spreading rumors that Catherine regularly seduces her married boss. He found some pictures of Catherine with company executives with ambiguous text and posted them online. Look at that look. Where is this a discussion about work? It's clearly seducing a married man. Soon, Catherine's career is in trouble. Her promotion was canceled and her co-workers shunned her. Meanwhile, Thomas begins to orchestrate another form of revenge. He hires a beautiful young actress and instructs her to return with him when Catherine is home. It was a total charade to irritate Catherine. That night, Thomas brought the blonde home and the two deliberately made out in the living room, making deliberate moaning noises. Catherine couldn't take it anymore and stormed out of the bedroom. Thomas, how could you? Thomas slowly straightens his clothes, sarcasm in his eyes. What? Don't you like excitement? Want to join us? Let's compare. Am I good or is George good? The blonde smiled cooperatively and said, Honey, is this the ex-wife you said liked to seduce men? It sure looks horny. Catherine was so ashamed that she burst into tears. Thomas, you've gone too far. I know I did wrong, but you can't insult me like that. Thomas approached Catherine and said coldly, Excessive? I'm just letting you feel what it's like to be betrayed. How about that? Is it painful? That's how you made me feel. Catherine went back to her room in tears. Thomas turned to the blonde. Thank you for your cooperation. The money has been transferred to your account. You can go now. The blonde nodded, grabbed her bag, and left. Meanwhile, George's side of the family isn't doing so well. Lisa used her position at the social media company to begin systematically destroying George's online presence. She created several real-looking accounts, posing as George's victims and claiming to have been sexually harassed by him. George Holmes promised me a promotion if I slept with him. When I refused, he threatened to fire me. George Holmes is a pervert. He has been harassing interns for years. HR, it's time to do something. The post quickly caught the attention of company executives. George is suspended for investigation, and his career and reputation are on the line. Lisa even got a couple of actors to stumble upon George outside his office and then yell out accusations of so-called inappropriate behavior. These scenes were seen by colleagues who just happened to be passing by. George's life is in shambles. He called Catherine several times for help, and at one point Thomas saw George's call and immediately snatched the phone away. What? Isn't life exciting? Thomas said sarcastically, Don't you just love playing with fire? Getting a taste for it now? George said desperately, Thomas, please, stop. I know we're wrong, but at this rate, our lives are over. Thomas sneered, You guys ruined my life. Now it's your turn to get a taste of that. Enjoy it. It's just beginning. At night, while Catherine curls up on the bed in the guest room and cries, Thomas sits in his study, reviewing his plan for revenge. He has not the slightest sympathy or regret, only a deep hatred for Catherine and George. They deserve this for choosing to betray me, Thomas said to himself. I will make them pay until they experience every bit of the pain I have experienced. Revenge burns in Thomas's heart, and he knows there's no turning back. But he didn't care, because as far as he was concerned, that was the punishment that betrayal deserved. He's going to make Catherine and George hurt, even if it means he has to fall into hell, too. Catherine finally can't take Thomas's vindictive behavior anymore and decides to move out of the home they share. On her last night before leaving, she plucks up the courage to have a thorough conversation with Thomas. When Thomas pushed open the door and saw Catherine sitting in the dimly lit living room, his eyes immediately turned cold and piercing. "Thomas," Catherine said softly, a hint of tremor in her voice, "before I leave, can we talk? I want you to understand why all this is happening." Thomas sneered, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Oh, you're finally ready to make excuses for your betrayal? This should be interesting." Catherine took a deep breath and tried to keep her composure. "I know my behavior was inexcusable, but Thomas, I need you to understand that it wasn't just because of physical need or impulse." She paused and continued. "Remember 3 years ago when I had a miscarriage? After that, I went into a severe depression. I felt like a failure as a woman, an incompetent wife. You, on the other hand, were always so perfect, successful in your career and full of confidence. I began to feel unworthy of you." Thomas's expression softened slightly, but quickly returned to indifference. Catherine continues, "I started taking antidepressants, but that made me feel worse. I became numb and lost my sex drive. I know you noticed, but you never said anything, just suffered in silence. It made me blame myself even more." Thomas suddenly interrupted her, sarcasm in his voice. "Oh, that's touching. So you've lost your libido, have you? Funny how you seem to have only lost your libido with me. With George, your fucking lust is practically flooding the room." Catherine winced, but continued. "It wasn't like that. Thomas, I was at my most vulnerable when George showed up. His attention helped me regain some of my confidence. At first, I just enjoyed being appreciated. But slowly, things got out of hand." Thomas sneered. "Out of control? What a convenient word. Tell me, Catherine, when you were moaning in the car, were you thinking it was just out of control?" Catherine was in tears. "Thomas, please hear me out. I'm not with George because he's better than you. In fact, every time I was with him, I was thinking about you. I was searching for that lost version of myself, for the passion we once had." Thomas suddenly bursts out laughing with a mixture of pain and mockery. "Wow, that's touching. So you're telling me that you cheated to save our marriage? That's so noble, Catherine. Maybe I should thank George for curing your depression and frigidity with." He closes in on Catherine and continues to rant. "You think you're the only one with a problem? When you miscarried, my fucking heart broke. But I chose to be strong because I knew you needed me. And what about you? You chose betrayal." Catherine sobbed, "Thomas, I know I made an unforgivable mistake. I just want you to understand." "Understand?" Thomas snapped, "Yes, I understand. I understand that you're a selfish bitch who would rather destroy our marriage to satisfy your own pathetic ego. I understand that you'd rather spread your legs and sleep with other men than communicate properly with me. I understand all of it." He turned and poured himself a glass of whiskey, and after taking a drink, said in a creepily calm tone, "You know what's ironic, Catherine, is that you say you're trying to get your passion back. But has it ever occurred to you that maybe the problem isn't with our marriage, but with you? Maybe you don't even know what true love and loyalty are. You'll never understand the meaning of commitment." Catherine stood up shakily. "Thomas, I'm really sorry. I hope one day you can forgive me." Thomas looked at her coldly. "Forgive? No, Catherine, I will never forgive you. Your betrayal was like a cut in my heart. That wound may scar, but the scar will always be there, reminding me how untrustworthy you are. Now, get out of my house. I never want to see you again." The moment the door closed, both Thomas and Catherine knew that there was no way things could ever go back to the way they were between them. The price of betrayal is so heavy that no one can really afford it. All those fond memories, all those shared years, have been reduced to nothing by a moment of weakness and betrayal. In the days to come, both Thomas and Catherine felt a stabbing pain whenever they recalled the experience. They understand that once they choose to betray, there is no turning back. The scar that would remain forever in their lives as the eternal bitter fruit of betrayal. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a story to share about your own or someone else's experience, please feel free to contact me. Take care.